Billionaire stunned to find his ex-wife and their stunning triplets. Jake Reynolds sat in his sleek Manhattan office, surrounded by accolades that felt eerily hollow. At 50, he was a self-made billionaire, yet inside, he felt far from celebrated. His gaze drifted to an award plaque, reflecting a life built on relentless ambition. But beneath the glass towers and corporate meetings lay a desolate heart. He thought of Emily, his college sweetheart, and their triplet daughters, now 8 years old, living in the small town he had left behind. Guilt gnawed at him. What kind of father chooses wealth over family? The quiet hum of his office was abruptly broken by ringing. Emily's sister's voice shattered his concentrated thoughts. Emily had been diagnosed with a life-threatening illness. A wave of turmoil crashed over him. He gripped the phone tightly. Images of his daughters smiling in summer dresses flooded his mind. Could he bear the weight of a father abandoning his family in their moment of need? The stark reality of his choices hit him. What had he sacrificed? He decided to return home. As he drove through the familiar streets of his childhood, nostalgia twisted in his gut. Memories of creaky porches and the comforting aroma of fresh-baked pies filled his thoughts, contrasting sharply with the sterile luxury of his Manhattan life. Pulling up to Emily's modest house, a swirl of mixed emotions enveloped him: hope, dread, and a heavy sadness. When he stepped out of the car and heard the laughter of his daughters playing in the yard, joy flickered momentarily within him, then dimmed as he locked eyes with Emily. Years of absence seemed to stretch between them. Her eyes reflected pain, but also a fierce resilience, a reminder of their shared dreams, now shattered. The tension simmered as he attempted to reconnect, his apologies sounding inadequate against the history that hung between them. Each word felt like a fragile bridge over a vast chasm of regret. He wondered, was it even possible to mend what was broken? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As he spent time with his daughters, their innocence and curiosity began to chip away at the walls he'd built. Their questions about his world, how could someone like him have ever walked away from them? Each laugh felt like a piercing reminder of the life he had forsaken, the love and warmth he'd sacrificed to climb the corporate ladder. Yet, as they played and chattered, Jake couldn't shake the feeling of disconnection. His mind raced, grappling with the reality he had fled, and desperately trying not to let down these little girls who deserved so much more. Just when he thought he was making progress, Emily confessed a startling secret about a family legacy tied to their past, a revelation that could shift everything he believed about success and drive a wedge deeper into their already fragile relationship. Suddenly, Jake was caught between the allure of wealth and the urgency to reclaim his family. Would he choose the financial empire he had built, or would he finally embrace the possibility of love that had fallen by the wayside? As these buried truths revealed themselves, Jake stood on the brink, facing the most important question of his life. Can he truly find a way back to the family he lost, or would his insatiable ambition drown him in isolation forever? The atmosphere in Emily's living room shifted as Jake took a seat at the edge of the worn-out sofa, his daughter's laughter gently echoing in the background. He felt the weight of their innocence bearing down on him. Each giggle felt like a judgment, a gentle reminder of his failures. The energy was warm, but Jake's heart felt persistently cool, a fortress defending against the warmth of familial love. "Dad, did you bring us anything?" the middle triplet, Lily, asked, her eyes sparkling with the kind of hopefulness that made his chest constrict. The simple childlike request undertoned a yearning for connection that resonated within him. The question ignited memories of gifts exchanged, a ritual that had been a cornerstone of their bond. He had bought anything they wanted during those early years, bicycles, dolls, and even extravagant vacations. Yet now, confined in his luxurious isolation, he understood that material gifts could never equate to the richness of lasting relationships. Well, not this time, he stammered, guilt flooding his words. But I came to spend time with you. Time? Emily interjected, her voice sharp yet laced with an undeniable sorrow. You can't buy that back, Jake. Her eyes bore into his, and in that moment he felt stripped bare, exposed. The truth of her words sent a shudder through him. Could they ever truly reconnect, or was he too far gone, hardened by years of choices that favored ambition over affection? As she turned to their daughters to help them with a board game, Jake's thoughts shifted. The family legacy Emily spoke of held a compelling allure, something he desperately wanted to understand. Curiosity replaced fear. He was determined to learn more about this hidden part of their past that could possibly alter the present. Emily, he chose his words carefully, gauging her reaction. What did you mean about our family legacy? I want to know. She paused, glancing back at him with wariness. It's not something that is easily shared, Jake. It's complicated. He leaned forward, vulnerability and determination lighting a fire in his chest. I can't change the past, but I want to understand. What if this could help in more ways than just mending what's broken? Her expression softened. Was it disbelief or hope? He dared not guess. They needed to confront the shadows lurking over their scattered family ties, and perhaps this was a good start. Throughout the afternoon, as they played the game, Jake found warmth seeping into their interactions. The echoes of laughter, once distant, began to feel a bit more genuine. He noted the tenderness of Emily's interactions with their daughters and yearned to be part of that nurturing bond they shared. Yet, he felt himself oscillating between old instincts and newfound motivations. Their conversations were punctuated by small snippets of laughter, but there was a frayed edge to the air, the tension that hinted at unaddressed resentments from the past. Jake excused himself for a moment, stepping outside into the cool evening air. The sunset bathed the landscape in a gentle glow, and he felt overwhelmed by thoughts of what was at stake. He needed to make a decision, not just for himself, but for Emily and their daughters. Could he weave a new narrative that incorporated the past with a vision for a more present future? When he returned inside, Emily had gathered the girls for a reading session, her back turned as she flipped through a book of their favorite fairy tales. A flicker of resolve ignited within him. Maybe this time he wouldn't just watch from the outside. He would step in. "Can I read with you?" he asked, his voice surprisingly steady. Emily looked back, her eyes widening in surprise. Was there a hint of encouragement there? Just as he pulled up a chair, ready to engage, he caught Emily's gaze. It felt charged with anticipation and fear, as if they were on the precipice of something that could either uplift or crumble everything they had. Was it truly possible to build a bridge over the chasm of the past? As he opened the book, preparing to read aloud, a sharp knock echoed from the door, interrupting the fragile moment. Every heart in the room skipped a beat. Jake locked eyes with Emily, a chilling realization dawning on him. Perhaps the truth he was seeking was about to confront him in a way he couldn't have anticipated. Who could that be? He muttered, uncertainty creeping back into his thoughts. As the knock reverberated through the living room, time suspended for Jake. The air thickened with unspoken possibilities. He exchanged a charged glance with Emily, whose demeanor shifted from surprise to a guarded caution. The laughter of their daughters softly faded into an anxious hush, each girl glancing from her mother to her father, sensing the thick tension. "Stay here," Emily instructed, a hint of authority in her tone that rang clear across the room. She stepped toward the door, her fingers trembling slightly on the knob, as if bracing herself against an unforeseen enemy. Jake's heart raced. He felt an overwhelming urge to reach out, to stop her, but rooted in his seat, He meticulously sought the courage that had so often eluded him. The door swung open, and standing on the threshold was a figure cloaked in shadows, the fading light illuminating their face, a face Jake recognized instantly, yet couldn't reconcile with the reality of his present life. It was Jacob, Emily's brother, the black sheep of the family whose estrangement had left scars across their relationships. The tension in the room thickened palpably as he stepped inside, ready with words that had the potential to provoke or heal. "Emily," he said, his voice carrying a weight of urgency, a vestige of deep-rooted hurt. "I need to talk." Emily's stance hardened. "Now? After all this time?" Her voice was laced with disbelief, yet beneath it flickered a glimmer of something Jake couldn't quite place. Hope, perhaps? That maybe their fractured family could somehow find common ground? But underneath the veneer, Jake felt a familiar instinct rising, a primal sense of urgency to protect what he had just begun to reclaim. How could their past come crashing in just when he felt he was starting to rebuild? The room pulsed with uncertainty. Every primal instinct inside him screamed to intervene, yet he hesitated. What could he offer in this moment, fraught with hurt and old grievances? "Jake," Jacob suddenly acknowledged him too, drawing attention to the man who'd once occupied a pivotal role in their lives. The words lingered between them like shadows, demanding acknowledgement. "What is this about?" Jake's tone, though steady, held a hint of defensiveness. The last thing he wanted was to navigate these troubled waters, especially while still grappling with his own demons. "It's about the family legacy you asked about," Jacob replied, a hint of urgency threading through his words. "There are things about our past that you need to know, things that could change everything." Emily's eyes darted back to Jake, searching for his reaction. The world outside faded, the demands of a chaotic life, the pressures of wealth, and the expectations that had once driven him to chase emptiness. Suddenly, the weight of their shared history hung palpably in the air. "I thought you wanted to understand," Jacob pressed, "but you need to be ready for the truth." Jake's mind raced. Could this long-estranged brother-in-law hold the key to unlocking the legacy Emily so dearly hinted at? Or was it another painful reminder of the familial chaos that had once consumed them? "Then let's talk," Jake finally replied, determination rippling through his chest. "But if we're going to dig up old wounds, I want everyone to be honest. This isn't just about you, Jacob." As the words left his mouth, a flicker ignited within him, a realization that this might be the moment that forgave the past. His gaze shifted toward Emily, who held her breath, caught between fear and hope. "Are you ready to face this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the whispers of their children, urging them to escape what they couldn't grasp. In that delicate moment, Jake knew this was not just about understanding their family legacy. It was about finally confronting the decisions, the choices, his choices that had shaped their fractured relationships. "What if I'm not?" he replied, his vulnerability naked and unguarded, yet strangely liberating. "Then perhaps it's time to find out," Jacob urged, stepping further into the threshold as truths began unraveling like threads woven too tightly. The path ahead would not be easy. It never was. But with each moment of tension, each flicker of hope, Jake sensed the undercurrents changing. "Let's begin," he said, unearthing courage, feeling emboldened by the stakes set before him. With that, he stepped toward the door, ready to entangle himself in the web of family dynamics threatening to bind him forever. But as the shadows deepened, he questioned whether facing the truth would lead to liberation or further isolation. Uncertainty loomed thickly. How much of the past could he and Emily afford to unpack without losing everything once gained? And in the backdrop of it all, the faint laughter of their daughters punctuated the silence, a reminder of the stakes, family, love, and the enduring struggle for connection. The air crackled with an intensity that felt almost palpable as Jake stepped into the uncertain space alongside Emily. Jacob's presence created a magnetic pull that drew them into uncharted territory, away from the comfort of their carefully constructed lives. Each of them carried heavy burdens. The weight of history, regret, and unspoken fears threatened to unravel everything they had managed to piece together. "Jake, I know this doesn't just affect me, but our family. I've made mistakes," Jacob confessed, the honesty in his voice echoing within the confines of the room. "I never meant to hurt you or Emily. I was lost." Jake swallowed hard as Jacob's admission hung in the air, a wake-up call of sorts, not just for the man who stood before him, but for himself as well. He had spent years avoiding uncomfortable truths about his past, yet here was a man, equally flawed, daring to confront his. "What you have to understand is that hiding doesn't solve anything," Jacob said, his gaze sharpening. It was an uninvited reflection of Jake's own journey, a reminder that avoidance had become a refuge he could no longer afford. Emily's eyes flickered between them, her expression a mix of hope and apprehension. "We need to hear each other," she said quietly, taking a step forward. "There's been so much silence." Jake took a moment to gauge the situation, feeling the fissures beneath the surface. Clenching his fists, he stepped further into the conversation. "This isn't just about old family drama," he asserted, surprising even himself with the intensity of his voice. "It's about our lives moving forward. If we're going to do this, then we need to lay everything bare. No more secrets." Jacob nodded, the gravity of Jake's words sinking in. "You're right. My decisions affected more than just me. They impacted you, Emily, the way you fought to create a life for our family." As the tension shifted, Jake felt the dawning realization that he too had layers of unresolved issues to tackle. He had been so focused on the external signals of success, on showcasing a perfect life to the world, that he had neglected to confront the internal fractures within himself. His professional path had become a code for running away. What kind of man was he if he couldn't confront his own shortcomings? "Fine, let's start with the truth," Jacob said, a steely resolve sparking to life. "About our father, what you might not know." The words, unearthing a trove of buried emotions, sent waves of anxiety through Jake. It wasn't just family history at stake, it was his own understanding of legacy, the shadows of which twisted around his present purpose. As Jacob spoke of their father's mistakes, Jake found himself reflecting, questioning his own. How could he fight for healing within this family if he remained ignorant of the foundation it was built on? The realization hit him. He was more than just a bystander in his life story. He was the author, and it was time to rewrite the narrative. The conversation continued to unfold, layers peeling back, to reveal truths long hidden beneath layers of resentment and fear. Each moment illuminated not only Jacob's scars, but also Jake's, decisions driven by insecurity, a need for validation that led him to momentary triumphs, but not happiness. Through this reckoning, he began to see himself as more than a husband or father. He could be a leader of sorts, one willing to embrace growth, share vulnerable moments, and perhaps extend forgiveness, not just to Jacob, but to himself. "Tell me everything," Jake urged as the thoughts danced in his mind. "I want to understand my place in this story, our family story. I want to be part of it, not just on the sidelines." With every shared memory and painful acknowledgement, Jake felt a stirring, a resolve unlike any before. For the first time in years, he felt tethered to his identity, prepared to walk through the fire of family dynamics. In that charged moment, he realized this was not merely about unveiling a long-hidden family legacy. It was about discovering himself in its weave. But just as clarity emerged, the noise of little feet and innocent laughter suddenly encompassed the adults' heavy air, yanking them back to the palpable reality of their daughters, fragile yet sparkling with potential, who had become unwitting listeners to their family's tumult. Jake's heart sank momentarily. What legacy would he leave for them? And what secrets were left unspoken that could shatter the fragile peace he had fought to establish? As he grasped the enormity of the situation, the looming question echoed in his mind. Was he prepared to redefine not only his role within the family, but the very legacy they would inherit? The moment was charged with possibilities, and Jake knew he was teetering on the precipice of transformation, ready to make choices that would ripple out into the uncertain future. With the laughter of his daughters dissolving the weight of the moment, Jake's heart raced uneasily. He felt torn between the life he had constructed and the jagged, raw edges of the truth that lay just uncovered. In that instant, he realized that they could neither afford to continue pretending nor ignore the unseen cracks in their foundation. "Let's focus on today," he suggested, forcing a smile for Emily and the kids. "They don't need to hear all this right now." Yet the denial felt like sand slipping through his fingers. They had to navigate through the complexities of their lives if they were ever going to forge a stronger bond. His daughters, bright and innocent, sprang in with questions about the snacks and games. Jake felt the allure of the mundane normalcy wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. He played the role of the engaged father, but inside, a storm brewed. Their laughter felt distant from the heavy shroud of familial strife hovering in the air. As Emily got lost in their daughter's interests, taking joy in their every laugh, Jake's thoughts churned. He'd also been that little boy once, searching for approval, seeking love, yet his roots were tangled. Could he reframe his narrative? Would confronting the past alone be enough to shift the trajectory of their family's legacy? After dinner, as the kids giggled and wove crayon drawings of fantastical worlds, Jake seized a moment of stillness. He found Emily in the kitchen, her back to him. Stars streaked through the jumper she wore, reflecting her light while the unvarnished details of their conversations stood heavy between them. "About what Jacob said about our father," Jake began, searching for the right way to express the tumult of thoughts inside him. Emily turned, a spark of understanding in her eyes, yet they exchanged a silent acknowledgement that they were navigating uncharted waters. "Do you think confronting these truths will really help us?" she asked cautiously. Jake's heart pounded. It wasn't just about Jacob anymore. It was about them forging a future steeped in honesty. "I think we can't keep living in shadows. I've spent too long chasing an ideal instead of embracing who I truly am. If I can't face these complexities, how can I be the man you need, the father they need?" A moment of silence settled between them, punctuated only by the distant laughter of their children. Emily stepped closer, placing a tentative hand on his arm. "What are you afraid of?" Jake inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of his choices tighten around him. "Summoning the courage to change," he confessed, the vulnerability raw in his voice. "I worry about unraveling everything we've built. I want to protect this family more than anything." Emily nodded, her gaze steady. Facing the truth might seem daunting, but that's what will ultimately lead us to understanding. And in understanding, there's a chance for healing. We have to try, Jake. The softness in her voice illuminated a path forward. The unfulfilling mask he had worn for so long began to feel tighter. He had already started rewriting the narrative. The awareness, the clarity were guiding him to a deeper journey within. But even as they made this vow to each other, a flutter of doubt nestled in Jake's mind. The path ahead would demand grit and resolve. He would have to confront not only his family troubles, but also the way his ambition had masked his vulnerability. As he prepared to open new wounds, he could almost hear the ticking of a clock, a reminder that time was of the essence. The next morning, he awoke with a newfound resolve, ready to take action. As he sipped his coffee, a flurry of ideas began to emerge. Maybe he could address the discomfort head-on by reopening family discussions during dinner. Perhaps he could propose a family trip that would allow them to face their past together while forging new memories. But just as he was mapping out a tentative plan, his phone buzzed with an incoming message. Glancing at the screen, an unexpected name shot through him like an electric current. It was a message from Jacob, and the words were cryptic. "We need to talk, Jake. It's about Dad, and something I should have told you long ago." Jake's pulse quickened. The past was demanding attention again, and it bore the seeds of a revelation that could change everything. Was he truly ready to dive deeper into this unraveling family legacy? As confusion and anticipation coursed through him, Jake understood. The time had come to face the truths that had long eluded him. He responded quickly, anxiety mingled with determination. "I'm listening." The waiting, the anxiety, layered with hope, hung heavily. This moment could either fracture the fragile peace he had begun to establish or forge an opportunity for redemption. He pressed send, feeling the weight of the decision, and waited for the unraveling that lay ahead. Jake paced the kitchen, anticipation clawing at him as he awaited Jacob's response. Each tick of the clock felt amplified, a reminder that pivotal moments often lurked within solitude. He couldn't shake the taste of dread that settled on his tongue, a mix of fear and hope centered around his brother's message. When his phone finally chimed again, he snatched it from the counter, breath held. Jacob's words buzzed through him, reverberating with potential. "Meet me at our old spot by the lake. We need to hash this out." The familiarity of the lake tugged at his memories, a sight rich with nostalgia but also filled with unspoken truths. He had spent countless hours there during their childhood, a watery backdrop where dreams were forged and illusions too. Today, however, it felt different, charged with new meaning. He took a moment to compose himself, recalling his resolve from the night before. He needed to embrace change, even if the very air around him crackled with the discomfort of confrontation. After a brief goodbye to Emily and the kids, he set off to meet Jacob, his heart drumming a mix of trepidation and determination. The drive felt longer than usual, the landscape shifting from suburban simplicity to the wild embrace of the woods surrounding the lake. Each mile fueled his introspection, a reel of recollections flooding his mind. Their childhood bond had been weathered by time, misunderstanding, and buried grievances. What would Jacob reveal? Could this conversation mend the fractures in their relationship, or would it expose deeper divides? As he finally approached the lake, a thin veil of fog hung over the water, shrouding the environment in mystique. He spotted Jacob on the shore, hands in pockets, a familiar silhouette against the backdrop of dense trees and rippling water. The gravity of their shared history felt palpable. When Jacob turned and locked eyes with Jake, the world stilled around them. There was a flicker of vulnerability behind his brother's hardened exterior, an invitation to delve into the depths of their family's past. Jake's heart raced. He understood that this moment could either bind them closer or unravel them entirely. "Thanks for coming," Jacob said, voice steady yet edged with uncertainty. Jake nodded, attempting to mask his own internal tempest. "What's going on?" Jake inhaled deeply, his shoulders rising and falling under the weight of an unseen burden. "It's about Dad. Things aren't as clear-cut as we thought. There's something I found out. Something he'd hidden from us." Jake's breath caught in his throat. He sensed the ground shifting beneath his feet as he prepared for whatever revelation lay ahead. Was this the catalyst he had been subconsciously seeking? "Why now?" Jake pressed, grappling with the implications of their father's secrets. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "I didn't know how. I struggled with whether to confront the family's legacy or let the past stay buried. But I can't hold on to it anymore. It's consuming me," Jacob confessed, his voice cracking. In that moment, it felt as if they were both unearthing the very foundation of their identities, caught between wanting to protect their family's legacy and facing the disarray it had become. Jake recognized that every untruth uncovered could build a bridge to understanding or a chasm of division. "What did you find?" Jake asked, his voice purposefully steady to mask the urgency building inside him. Jake hesitated, searching for the right words as the mist rolled in more heavily around them. It's about who he really was, his choices, the burdens he carried. There's a part of our story that neither of us fully understood, and it ties back to his upbringing, a secret that's been passed down, affecting our lives whether we know it or not. Jake felt his thoughts racing, the urgency of Jacob's revelation igniting a spark. And the impact on us, on our family? Jacob met his gaze, a storm brewing in his eyes. That's what we need to figure out together. If we can unravel this, it might change everything for us, Jake. The weight of unearthing family secrets loomed over him with potent intensity. Was he truly prepared to confront the shadows of his heritage? To wrestle with the truth that could redefine what he thought he knew about himself and his family? As the fog thickened around them, Jake recognized an undeniable truth. They were standing on the precipice of their family's narrative, each word poised to either heal their fractured bond or plunge them into irreparable chaos. But as ready as he felt to confront the past, another part of him quaked with uncertainty about the path he was choosing. Determined to break the cycle, he clenched his fists, bracing himself. Let's talk. In that moment, they both understood they were embarking on a journey that would delve deep into their family's history, into truths they weren't sure they were ready to face. Would they emerge stronger, or would the revelations threaten to tear them apart? As they began to share, the air thickened with tension, each revelation promising to peel back layers, but eerily hinting at darkness to come. Jake felt the cool air wrap around him, mingling with the uneasiness that buzzed at the edges of his consciousness. As the water lapped gently at the shore, each ripple felt like an echo of the tumultuous dialogue poised to unfold. He could almost taste the bitter remnants of their father's legacy hanging in the air, a heady concoction of regret and unresolved bitterness. "All right," Jake said, his resolve sharpening. "Tell me what you found." Jacob squared his shoulders, the tension tightening the muscles in his neck. "I started digging after Mom passed. I needed to understand him, understand us. I found letters, old documents, even photographs that weren't in the albums. It's like there was a whole life he hid from us." Jake's heart raced as Jacob continued to speak, but a part of him recoiled at the thought of their father's undisclosed past. "What do the letters say?" he pressed, the need for clarity driving him forward, though he bit back the fear bubbling deep within. Dad wrote about his childhood, about his father's expectations and the unspoken rules he felt forced to follow. There are parts of his life that he carried like burdens, and in so many ways, he passed those burdens on to us without us even realizing, Jacob explained, his voice quavering. Feeling the weight of Jacob's words, Jake's mind spun. How much of their father's struggles had shaped their own choices? The thought sent ripples through his perspective. Had they suffered under the weight of inherited fears? Jake took a deep breath, struggling to remain steady as he processed the implications of this new understanding. "What kind of expectations?" Jake asked, an edge of desperation creeping into his tone. "Success, achievement at any cost," Jacob replied, his expression hardening. He believed that personal value came from what he could accomplish. It was the reason we never felt enough. Those words struck Jake like a physical blow. He recalled countless moments when he had felt inadequate, grappling with his identity against the backdrop of a legacy that loomed larger than life itself. What if all this time their father's unfulfilled dreams had become shackles binding them to expectations that were ultimately unattainable? As if sensing Jake's inner turmoil, Jacob continued. "There's one letter in particular. He talks about wanting to break free, but he was trapped by what he thought he had to be. It hurt him, and that pain became a twisted form of love he shared with us. But it's not love when it binds, Jake." The gravity of his brother's words hung heavily in the air. Could this really be the key to finally understanding their father, and through that, themselves? So, if he felt trapped, why didn't he seek help? Why didn't he change his path? Jake's voice held a mixture of rage and confusion. He had the power to alter our legacy. Maybe, Jacob conceded, his voice dropping to a whisper. But fear doesn't simply disappear. Sometimes it locks you in a cage so tight that even the thought of freedom feels too overwhelming to grasp. I think he tried to make right his mistakes in the only ways he knew how. Jake considered the notion. The idea that their father had been just as human, a man wrestling with demons and regrets, hurt, changed the narrative in his mind. It opened a door to compassion, but also raised more questions than answers. What did overcoming their past look like? I don't want to carry his burdens anymore, Jake finally admitted, his voice firm yet vulnerable. But if we dive into this, we need to be ready to face the fallout. It might change everything, Jacob. A heavy silence fell between them, the air a charged mix of anticipation and anxiety. They leaned into the gravity of the moment, knowing that the journey ahead promised revelations that could redefine their understanding of family and identity. Jake steeled himself, the urge to confront this truth igniting a new determination. Together, we can reframe our narrative, but we need to know everything. What else is there? Jacob's gaze darkened, shadows flickering in his eyes as he took a step back, pondering the weight of his secrets. There's more, and it may change how we see everything we've known. With that revelation hanging in the air like an unspoken challenge, Jake felt a shiver of foreboding and curiosity twisting in his stomach. He was ready to break the cycle, but what lay hidden just beneath the surface could just as easily drown them both. As Jacob took a deep breath, Jake's resolve hardened. They would not shrink from this reckoning. Together, they would face whatever darkness the past held, and perhaps finally carve out a path that belonged to them alone. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the sand as Jake stood at the water's edge, grappling with his tumultuous emotions. The revelations from Jacob weighed heavily on his mind, spinning equations of hurt and potential liberation. He glanced at his brother, who scuffed his feet in the sand, visibly wrestling with enthusiasm and dread. "What's next?" Jake asked, planting his feet firmly in the moist sand, determined not to be swept away by their family's tide of despair. Jacob shifted awkwardly, avoiding Jake's gaze, which only heightened the tension between them. After a moment, Jacob finally spoke. "The last letter mentions a man named Walter. It seems Dad felt he owed him something, a debt of sorts. There's no mention of what kind it was, but it seemed significant." Jake furrowed his brow as he processed this piece of information. A debt? The idea filled him with questions. Could this tie their father's legacy to something darker? Did he ever say why? "No," Jacob replied, shaking his head. "I wish he had. It's like he carried it in silence, holding it close as if revealing it would have shattered everything." The unease gnawed at Jake, a stark reminder of how tightly their father clutched his secrets. Each piece they uncovered felt like pulling at a loose thread, threatening to unravel the entire fabric of their upbringing. Determination rippled through Jake. "We have to find out who this Walter is. If his life impacted Dad so deeply, it could hold the key to understanding our own lives." Jacob nodded, but looked hesitant, as though the idea of seeking this man was daunting. What if he doesn't want to be found? Jake considered this, the resolve in his heart contending with the shadows of doubt creeping in. This isn't about what he wants. It's about us, our story, our path forward. We can't allow the lingering effects of the past to dictate our futures. Jake's features softened at Jake's conviction, and he exhaled slowly, as if the act alone lightened his burden. "You really believe we can change things?" "More than that," Jake affirmed. "The cycle ends with us. But standing still isn't an option. We need to act now." As they formulated a plan, Jake felt a sense of urgency surge through him. Each idea bounced between them, fueling their growing commitment to seek out the truth. With every passing minute, he felt the bounds of his father's legacy loosening. Clarity sparked a fire within him, illuminating hidden capabilities he had yet to fully embrace. "Let's start with the town records. There might be something about Walter in there," Jake suggested. "We need every lead, no matter how small." Jake's expression brightened, and that infectious energy jump-started Jake's resolve. They turned their attention back toward the path leading out of the dense memories of the beach. And with each step, Jake felt himself inspired by the prospect of rewriting the narrative that had been forced upon them. But as they drove into town and approached the local archives, an unsettling thought crept into Jake's mind. What if Walter wasn't the only missing piece? What if he represented a larger picture, one that could unravel even more than they anticipated? His heart began to race as they reached the parking lot, and he caught sight of a figure stepping out from behind a car, a silhouette that made his chest tighten. The man had familiar features, but all Jake could feel was an echo of betrayal resonating in his bones. Before he could process what lay ahead, a voice called out, sharp and clear, "Jake, is that you?" Stunned, Jake turned to meet the eyes of someone he never expected to face again. In that instant, every determination he held collided with an intensity of emotions he had buried deep. The past was no longer a distant echo. It was standing right in front of him, demanding recognition. What awaited him beyond that moment? Would this confrontation be the reckoning he yearned for, or would it open a deeper wound? Jake felt the ground shift beneath him, every carefully constructed thought slipping away as he faced the source of his turmoil. The figure before him, an embodiment of a past he thought he had escaped, was none other than Clara, his ex-wife. Her presence stole the breath from his lungs and sparked a tempest of unresolved feelings. Time stood still as their eyes locked, a mixture of shock and disbelief hanging in the air. Should he feel anger, relief, or a blend of both? The months apart had cloaked his heart with a shell of indifference, but now, seeing her again, chipped away at those defenses. Clara's once familiar features now felt foreign, like a cherished photograph turned yellow with age. "Jake," she breathed, a plea mixed with an acknowledgement of their shared history. The name sounded different now, wrapped in unspoken words and memories that lingered like shadows in the corners of his mind. In that moment, Jake grappled with the emotions that surged within him. Was his anger justified, or had it silently morphed into regret? He realized he had a choice, a chance to confront the past or to shut it out completely. But beyond his own instincts lurked the weightiness of the family secret he had started to unravel. "Clara," he managed at last, struggling to keep his voice steady. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see, well, it's complicated," she stumbled, the confidence he once admired now flickering under the weight of scrutiny. Clara always had an air of mystery that intrigued him, though he hadn't anticipated ever experiencing it again. As she hesitated, Jake felt the enormity of the moment sinking in. The unresolved feelings they shared pulsed beneath the surface like an underground river, unseen yet powerful. Here she was, standing at a crossroads in his life, just as they once had. "I've missed you," she eventually confessed, her eyes downcast, as if afraid of the vulnerability permeating the air between them. "I've thought about calling many times, but you didn't," Jake finished for her, eager to confront the blame that hung like a shroud over their memories. Her absence had left a void, one that filled with questions about what could have been. "I didn't know how. I was scared of what you might say," Clara replied softly, lifting her gaze to meet his. In those eyes, he saw the flicker of the connection they once shared, the passion, the dreams, the promises. Jake took a step closer, acutely aware of the shifting tides of his emotions. He remembered the laughter they had shared and the dreams they once crafted together, now overshadowed by echoes of hurt and betrayal. "What about the triplets?" he asked, unable to conceal the weight of that question. Did she carry the same longing he felt, the enduring peace of their lives that lingered like a melody? They're with my parents right now. They've been asking about you," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper, laden with regret. "It hasn't been easy." In that moment, Jake saw the other part of their story entwined in hers, the innocent lives they had brought into the world. Suddenly, the stakes of the conversation escalated dramatically. This wasn't just about past mistakes. It was about forging a future, understanding their present roles as parents, and the complexity of reconciling their fractured history. Without realizing it, Jake's mind was already racing ahead, formulating conversations he never thought he would have. Each emotional twist began to reveal a different facet of himself, capabilities he had never fully embraced. "Clara, we have to talk about this, about everything," he asserted, instinct driving him now towards a direction he hadn't thought possible. Could he extend his heart to allow her back into his life? The prospect dangled precariously before him. As they exchanged tentative words, he felt an unquenchable thirst not only for understanding, but for an opportunity to reclaim the narrative. So many unresolved issues clouded their horizon, intertwining with the search for Walter, their father's mysterious debt, and the shadows of past decisions casting long into their present. But as Jake's resolve blossomed, a thought pierced through the impending flood of emotions. What if reconciling with Clara jeopardized his quest for truth? The realization hit him like a tidal wave. Could he redefine his life's purpose while navigating the perils of vulnerability with Clara? As the weight of potential consequences settled heavily on his shoulders, he took a deep breath, ready to confront not just Clara, but the truth in all its forms. "Let's start here," he suggested, sensing the urgency within his own heart. "We might just have more to uncover than we ever imagined." And with that, everything shifted. The weight of the past did not obscure their path any longer. It illuminated their way toward discovery, though the edges remained sharp and treacherous. As Jake spoke, a feeling of impending recognition washed over him, setting him on a journey that blurred lines between reconciliation, revelation, and the pursuit of the truth. What awaited them in the uncharted territory of their renewed connection? Would they unravel the beauty of their past, or would it furnish new scars that would forever alter their fates? The sun began its ascent, painting the room in hues of orange and gold as Jake Reynolds sat at the breakfast table, his mind a whirlpool of thoughts. The echo of yesterday's revelations with Clara still played in his head, a haunting melody that filled him with both anxiety and anticipation. The delicate balance of his fractured family legacy was now more intricate than ever. Today was no longer just about uncovering his father's past. It was also about reclaiming the present alongside Clara and their daughters. As he poured himself a cup of coffee, Jake felt a profound shift within him. He was no longer merely a corporate titan chasing accolades. He was a man determined to rebuild the relationships he had long neglected. Each sip felt like a promise to himself, a promise to step into the vulnerable space of fatherhood and partnership. Moments later, Emily entered the kitchen, her presence bringing warmth that ignited hope in Jake's heart. "You seem distant," she observed, her gentleness diffusing the tension hanging thick between them. Her beauty, radiating grace and strength, reminded him of the journey they had just begun. "Just thinking about yesterday," Jake replied, recalling the conversation with Clara and the chance to reconnect with his daughters. "Clara came back into my life. Everything feels uncertain." Emily's brow furrowed momentarily. Then she gave a small nod of understanding. "It's complicated, but I sense you're ready to face it head-on, aren't you?" Jake met her gaze, feeling the sincerity behind her words. "More than I ever was," he replied, the determination crystallizing in his chest. If I'm going to navigate this, I need to confront my past, and that means acknowledging every part, including Clara. A warm silence enveloped them, the weight of shared responsibility pulling them closer together. "We're in this together," she affirmed. "No matter what happens, it's about putting our family first and forging a path that honors our girls and ourselves." This declaration anchored Jake's resolve. With newfound clarity, he envisioned their daughters, their bright eyes shining with innocence and optimism. They deserved a father willing to strip away layers of ambiguity and embrace honesty, both with himself and with the family he had neglected. After breakfast, Jake realized there was no time to waste. He needed to act. He picked up his phone and texted Clara, "Let's meet. I want to talk about the girls and the past." The urgent yet sincere note felt like a call to arms, a step towards healing that was both thrilling and terrifying. The response arrived swiftly. "Sure, can we meet at the park? It feels more welcoming." As he made his way to the park, Jake's heart raced with every pulse of his being. Turning a corner, he spotted Clara under a maple tree, the golden leaves fluttering carelessly in the gentle breeze. The very essence of that tree, beautiful yet slightly weathered, mirrored the complexities of their history. It was here, laden with nostalgia, that they would confront their foundation. "Hi, Clara," he said, forcing a smile despite the swirling storm inside him. "Hi, Jake," she replied softly, her gaze momentarily choosing the ground before meeting his. "Thanks for coming." "Of course," he answered, taking a seat beside her on the rusted bench. "I think it's time we talk not just about the past, but about the future of our girls. They need us." Clara's expression brightened with what seemed like relief, and together they began to navigate the rocky terrain that lay ahead. "I haven't been honest about how I felt since everything," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "The girls, they miss you. I miss what we had." As she spoke, Jake felt layers of guilt and longing flooding through him. "I thought money and ambition could fill that void. I was wrong. What I truly wanted was a family. I left you and our daughters because I was too consumed with my ego to see what really mattered." Clara's eyes shimmered, a mixture of pain and understanding reflected in them. "It was never just about you leaving. It was about feeling abandoned. They need their father." "I know now," Jake interrupted, urgency pushing his words. "I want to be there for them, every step of the way. I want to fix this, not just for you, but for us and our little girls." Clara's gaze softened, the opening of her heart a tentative yet courageous act. "If you want to be in their lives, we need to co-parent effectively. It requires trust, communication, and commitment." Jake nodded, determination firing within him. "I'm ready, whatever it takes." As they mapped out a plan that involved open lines of communication and regular family days, Jake felt an unfamiliar lightness fill the spaces of his heart. Being honest and willing to embrace vulnerability released the weight he had carried for far too long. He envisioned a new shared future, where struggles would be met with understanding rather than avoidance. After their conversation, Jake proposed they engage Emily in this new journey of family growth, understanding they would need a unified front. Clara agreed openly, her willingness to collaborate signaling that old wounds could find healing. "Let's do this together," Jake said confidently, feeling not just the promise of a new dawn, but the tangible shifts within himself becoming real. "We can embrace our past, but forge a future centered on love and connection." As Jake returned home, each step felt more purposeful. He envisioned the future, a house full of laughter, something he had longed for yet evaded. His heart sang at the thought of seeing his daughters again, of overcoming the years of distance. Realizing the material wealth he had pursued paled in comparison to the legacy of love he could nurture now. Days turned into weeks as Jake remained steadfast, forging connections with Clara, Emily, and the girls. They shared moments that were honest, painful yet necessary,
weaving both families into a supportive fabric, one that would blanket them in unconditional love. The cycle of avoidance he once encoded in his practices had finally cracked, replaced with a newfound desire for openness. Recognition came for Jake, not just from the accolades of business achievements, but from his daughters acting out familiar routines they'd once cherished. Whether it was spontaneous outings to the zoo or late-night story sessions, Jake reveled in being present. Each experience was a carat of personal triumph, an authentic testament to the hard work of transformation. The corporate world fell to the side. Jake built his foundation not on profits, but on the relationships he cultivated. Professional success transformed into familial elements as he learned to balance his ambition with prioritizing family. On a crisp autumn day, Jake made a gesture that encapsulated his journey. He and Clara, with Emily's encouragement, hosted a picnic at the very park where revelations had begun to unfold. The atmosphere buzzed with laughter, freshly made sandwiches, and joyous chaos, each fleeting moment weaving a narrative of connection and reconciliation. With Emily's blessing, Jake finally felt like he could breathe again. Every choice he had made bore the fruits of authentic growth. They had turned a story of separation into one filled with hope. Buried resentments gave way to acceptance, and the family he had once narrowly defined transformed into something much larger. "Dad," one of the triplets chirped, pulling on his sleeve to claim his attention. "Can we tell a story together?" With joy blooming within him, Jake nodded. "Absolutely." As he settled into the blanket with his daughters, overwhelmed by the love they emanated, he felt proven right. Echoes of their poignant past faded as he embraced this new legacy, the one that bifurcated ambition with meaning, rooted in healing, trust, and the unwavering bond of family. As the sun dipped low, he shared his heart as he spun tales that dovetailed dreams with the vivid likeness of their shared life. No longer estranged from his own emotions, Jake had transformed into a man grounded in purpose, capable of demonstrating the profound depth of real love. His journey forward embraced clarity, symbolizing that the best resolution came from authentic courage, to stay connected, vulnerable, rejuvenated, and unflinchingly consistent in facing the challenges of life. Now, standing in this new chapter, Jake felt something indescribable, a sense of solid confidence, recognized competence, and belonging unparalleled. It was a testament to the ache of nostalgia intermingled with anticipatory joy, the culmination of a transformed man forging his legacy anew. He was ready to embark not just as a father or businessman, but as a man intertwined fully with family, love, and integrity. Growth had a cost, but it bore the sweetest rewards of acceptance and connection, proof that life was indeed a story worth
telling. And that was just the beginning. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.